if you're invested more money into your crypto than your crypto is worth, and you have an investment somewhere else in your portfolio that made money, then you should get with your tax practitioner and see if maybe you shouldn't sell some crypto at a loss in order to offset it against some income if it's investment money outside of a retirement account.
Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Weapon X Holsters. Quality handmade Kydex holsters made right here in Southern Utah. You can stop by the store, 1397 West Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick Leg Podcast. We are in the vault today with a very knowledgeable local lawyer that's here to kind of walk us through estate planning, setting up trusts. We're going to get into a little bit of crypto. So how we got into this is my wife and I actually went and spoke with Tom. This is Tom Bayles. I'll introduce you and then I'll get into that. This is Tom Bayles. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
I'm glad you could etch a little bit of time out of your schedule to come in.
Anything for my first podcast.
There you go. So Amanda and I, as anyone that's listened to this knows, we have a 2-year-old son, William, and we're trying to set up assets, trying to get a lot of things planned right now. We're early 30s. I can't seem to sit still very long, so I'm always moving into more and more things, hopefully producing income, right? And so I was talking to Amanda thinking, hey, we should probably get some of this stuff set up for William. And I don't even know where to start. And so I had talked to one of your sons, and I knew that you were kind of in this space, but I didn't know what you did. And he was like, oh yeah, my dad's the guy. Go talk to my dad. And so we had set up a thing online and we came in and now we have what it would be called a what? It's a living trust, or what's it called?
It's a revocable trust package or going out package, maybe.
A going out package, yeah. Well, and that's interesting too, because after we had set it up, the whole purpose of it was if something happens to Amanda and I, where does Will sit? And how do we set these things aside so it benefits him and when we die? And then I started thinking, well, wait, people use these while they're living too. And so I kind of thought maybe we can get into that a little bit. And I'm not knowledgeable in this space at all. And so as you say things, don't judge me if I'm like, so what does that mean? And then make you explain it.
I'll be kind.
Okay. So right off the bat, the things that you do most with your guys' law firm is what?
Our law firm's narrow. We do estate planning, so trusts and wills, powers of attorney, healthcare directives. We also do, so that kind of things for the living, right, planning, and we do business succession planning. You've got key employees that you want to turn the business over to, or you want it to go to family later. We just talk through different scenarios and help set up documents. And then for the people that aren't living, we deal with wills and probate and trust administration, help clients through a really hard time in their lives when they've lost somebody that's close to them, and try to make it understandable because it's a complicated world. Yeah. But we generally can boil it down to something easy to understand.
Great. Yeah, so we came in, it was actually extremely easy. It was easier than I thought. And a lot of the verbiage, I was following it about 90%, but there's some things, we were sitting down there with one of your employees and I'm like, I don't know what this means. And she kind of looked at me and I'm like, don't judge me. And she's like, no, you've just followed so many of these other words. I thought you were knowledgeable on all this. And I'm like, well, I'm knowledgeable to an extent, but there was one thing, or I think 2 things I had to have her spell it out for me. So the reason I say that is it's not as intimidating as you think it would be to sit down and do what we did was a trust, right? Yeah. So I kind of wanted to bring you in just to talk about a lot of that, and maybe even back my experience up further. My father passed away a couple years ago, and not that he had, assets and money and all these things to pass on. It just kind of got me thinking about all of this stuff, right? And Amanda and I are in different shoes than my parents were. And so it really got me like life insurance. I went and got life insurance after that. There was different things that I thought, okay, I need to start setting my life up a little different. So after I talked to you, I thought, heck, man, if I could get you on the podcast just to bring up some of these terms that we all hear, but we don't know what it is, or why it benefits us, whether that's tax-wise, generation-wise, whatever it is, I thought it'd be cool just to bring you on and we just go through all these different things.
For sure.
Okay. So let's start with setting up an estate plan or a trust. Why does that benefit someone? Why would they even want to do that?
Well, it's one of those things that it does benefit you during life. We put provisions, for example, in a revocable trust that say to manage your money for your benefit during your lifetime if you become incapacitated. So it's got a management piece there. We also have, a lot of thought into who are your heirs. You want to benefit Amanda if she survives you, and should there be controls there or no controls there. And then with your son, William, and I get to talk about these because you brought them up. Otherwise, I couldn't even say it.
So I brought all that up intentionally so we could open book this and talk about it.
So with William, with a young child, if we didn't do some planning and you and Amanda both passed away and William inherited money at age 21, he's probably going to get that new Corvette or a truck, a diesel pickup that, cost a few bucks. And that might not necessarily be the way you'd hope he'd spend that money that you and Amanda left. So we like to put provisions in that restrict how soon a child can get it. And I like to think that a person's a minor if they're under age 25 or under age 30. You kind of think through when you started to think clearly after your teenage years. And that's kind of where we encourage clients to let their children have a little more access to the inheritance if the parents are deceased.
Yeah, because that's what I had thought. Like, well, when he's 18, I don't want him to have, and let's just hope that there is an amount of money there at the end, right? But I didn't want him to have full access to it at 18, and I assumed that's what it is because you're viewed as an adult, I guess, in the court of law, right? And so, that was one thing we did was it was 25. He doesn't have access till he's 25, or he has access, but he has to go through my brother.
Yeah, your brother, the trustee.
Yeah.
So he's under age 25. Recall he's got access for health, education, support, and maintenance in the discretion of your brother, the trustee. So if William comes in and says, "Hey, I want to go take squirrel suit diving lessons in Costa Rica next year," your brother could either support that, or he could say, that's not really what your parents had in mind. That's not what we're going to do with the money. But if you want to go to tech school, or you want to go to university, or you want to start a business, let's talk.
Yeah.
And they've got some flexibility that way.
And so that was kind of important to me, was one of the biggest reasons why I did it. And what are some of the things that you can do? Because this is going to be a learning thing for me. I did all this to set it up when I die. But what are some things that you can do to benefit yourself with the trust while you're still alive?
Well, we covered some things. So a revocable trust, it doesn't change your tax outcome. You're still filing the same 1040, and the IRS still gets their pound of flesh. So there's not really any planning to get you away from federal income tax on that in that way. But you do cover things, so it really gives you peace of mind. So, for example, if you couldn't make medical decisions at some point because of illness or injury, if you're named your spouse as the agent on your healthcare directive, then she could make decisions for you if you couldn't. And so we've covered things that at your age you're not really worrying about, but with activities that you get involved in, it could happen.
Sure.
Where we need those documents. And so we've got some support in there. On the planning side, you have some different investments, and we talked through some of those and gave you some tax strategy as well as just some good, solid asset protection strategy as we discussed some of your investments, but I'm not going to bring those.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Not
that they're bad.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, the ones that you have with the mob, we probably. Another thing I thought was interesting, and I came into this in a very tunnel vision mindset of my situation, right? But as you're going through these things and Amanda's sitting next to me, it made me think like, I'm glad that I have trust with her, and I'm glad that we're loyal to each other, because setting these things up with someone that you don't trust or you're not loyal to or is not loyal to you could be extremely scary. And so it wasn't even something I'd thought about to go set something up without her. She was always part of it, right? And then as we're going through some of those things, like making medical choices if you're incapacitated, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, I guess in different situations that could be a bad thing.
Yeah, if she was a veterinarian, you might rethink it, right?
Yeah.
You break a leg and they'll put you down.
Exactly. And so a lot of that stuff kind of you can set it up by yourself too, right? Or how does that work?
You could, yeah. So if somebody came in and they weren't in a great relationship with a spouse, but they were still married, we could plan their side of it and not worry about their spouse, right? Because our duty would be to represent our client, which is the person that came in. And you'll recall with you and Amanda, we had a conversation about joint representation and the idea that if you two consented to joint representation, then we could talk with both of you, handle the planning for both of you, but anything either one of you told us about your estate planning, we'd share with the other one. That way, if you called up and said, "Hey, Tom, I had, $10,000 in a coffee can by the gate post," we'd be on the phone to Amanda and let her know where to go dig.
Yeah, exactly. How does it work if there's a divorce? Not that I'm worried about that, but I'm just thinking I have divorced friends, siblings. I have a sibling that's divorced. How does that work? How does it restructure?
So you mean where we've represented the couple and then they get divorced?
Yeah.
Once they're divorced, then we can represent one spouse or the other again. And of course, then we would not be sharing information back and forth.
Yeah.
And so we've done that. We've also represented a lot of divorced spouses that are already divorced on different things. And so that wouldn't be a bad thing for us to get into as well, because there's one of the questions that you got to think of if you're divorced with minor children is if you don't do some of the planning that we're talking about, your ex-spouse could well be in charge of your money for the benefit of your kids. And you're putting a lot of trust in someone that you're no longer married to.
Yeah, that'd be scary.
Power, yeah. So it's a good reason to do some planning.
And that could be money you had, assets you had, or even like life insurance and things like that would all go to.
Yeah, if they had minor children and you didn't have any planning in place, that spouse that's the parent of the minor children may well be in charge of the money for the minor children if you haven't done some planning before you died. So not the place a lot of people want to be.
Yeah, if that's you and you're listening to this, you should probably get signed up with Proven Law and
sure.
Go get this planned out. Anything else we should cover on that kind of stuff? I mean, I don't.
So let me back up to your question. Your question was what happens if a couple gets divorced after we've represented them. If they're not divorced yet, but they're having conflict, we can't do anything because we had a joint representation situation. And that comes up sometimes, and we have to refer both the husband and wife out to get new counsel if they want to make a change while they're in the middle of the divorce.
Okay.
Which, it is good to consider what happens if you're in the middle of the divorce and something happens to you. So, not a bad idea to look at it. But for us, we have to step away if we've undertaken joint representation. So then
you step away and they go get someone separate each.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like you can be like, well, I like the husband more, so I'm going to stay with him.
That'll just get me in trouble. So I'm not jumping in that way.
Okay. Anything else? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton, but anything else that's layman terms that people would understand?
Well, when we're talking about, divorced people, they've got the same issues. Who's going to take care of the kids? And if their spouse is still alive, then their spouse is probably going to be taking care of them. But sometimes they're divorced because their spouse was really into some bad stuff, and then maybe they wouldn't get custody. But it doesn't hurt to name a guardian. It doesn't hurt to set up somebody to manage their money for the children if they want to protect that and they're worried about how their ex-spouse would handle it. If they're thinking of remarrying, it's really good to get in because a lot of clients, when they've had children and their children are like mine between age 21 and almost 30, they might not throw all in and say, yeah, what's ours is ours. They might say what's mine's mine and what's yours is yours. And if that's kind of the mindset you're in, you're thinking of getting married, you should definitely get in and get a premarital agreement and and maybe even a separate revocable trust before you get married. So you can plan for that.
Yeah. Gosh, I had something else. I should have wrote it down. Oh, it's gone. It's left me.
I know what it was. You were going to say, has anybody come to you as a couple and left wanting to get divorced?
I know that's not the case.
It's happened a couple of times, but on those occasions, they were already on the outs.
Yeah,
We wouldn't have caused that. But
it was like there was a few things where I kind of had to sit back and think.
We ask some direct questions, don't we?
Yeah. And there was even Amanda's in the medical field, and so there was something to do with medical decisions that I was like, no question, like Amanda makes decisions for me, like she's informed in all of this stuff, right? And then she's like, so is that what I do? And I'm like, well, hold on, like I don't know about this stuff, so you may want to think about putting someone else on there, or I may not even be in the right mindset to make that decision, and I'm uneducated about it. And so I was like, your sister has a medical background. Maybe I don't know, maybe she's better. And I honestly don't even remember what she put down. I think she put me down, but
I'm sure she put you.
But it just made me think like, well, I know who I'm putting, but maybe I'm not the right person for her to put down. So yeah, I actually thought it was kind of fun because it made us, if those questions ever came up, now we've kind of discussed that, you know what I mean? And so if anything, I thought we were a little closer at the end of it because we understood where each other's, where our thoughts were on each other. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel a lot better too. I was really worried.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you were. Okay, so probate. You guys do a lot of probate stuff too.
We do a lot of probate work.
Obviously, we can't get into anything specifics of certain things, but how does that work? Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. I remember. So back up to the trust stuff and lining all that stuff out, it was interesting how deep you have to go. And you hear people that they inherit all this money from a crazy uncle that they never knew or whatever, right? Uh-huh. And I started thinking like, okay, let's just say there's $100,000 to be split up and Amanda and I are gone and Will's gone. Well, now what? And so then it kind of, you guys are spelling out how that kind of filters down, right? And it was interesting to me that when people say they had a long lost uncle or whatever, grandpa, whatever, and they ended up cashing out some money from that, it connected all the dots of how that happens. So is there a standard way that filters through?
It's a good question. There's different ways. So some clients will say that if they're out on a cruise with the whole family and everybody's gone, nobody gets back. Some clients will go to a group of charities. Usually they pick more than one. But more often they'll say that they want to do a gift to their heirs at law. They don't actually, say that because who would talk that way except a lawyer? But we'll talk about that and we'll say, well, we could, as a contingent to this, because it's unlikely, we could send it to, your heirs at law, which would look for your parents. And if your parents are deceased, then your brothers and sisters. And then we go ahead and feed it down and say, and if a brother or sister is deceased, then their share would go to their children. And that way we pretty well know that no matter what happens, somebody is going to inherit, and it's not going to escheat to the state of Utah. As much as people love the state of Utah, we all feel like we gave enough when we paid our state income tax, and we're not dying to give them our our assets as well at death. So
yeah, that's a very realistic thing for people that don't have these set up, right? I mean, that's
if there is a provision in the code. So if you fail to plan, the legislature's got you because they know that people are going to procrastinate too long and die. And the legislature tried to guess what a person would want that died with no planning. So if you're single and have children and you die with no planning, generally it says give it to your children. If you're in a first marriage and all of your children are also from that marriage, then the law generally says give everything to your spouse. And it's outright, and it's probate. If you're in a second marriage with children from a prior marriage, then the law gets a little bit trickier, and the numbers are indexed for inflation. So this isn't the exact number, but roughly it's $75,000 plus half of the probate estate goes to the new spouse, and the balance of the assets goes to the children. But the calculation is very complicated, because if somebody receives a joint tenancy account as a result of the death of the decedent, then that counts against them. But suffice it to say, the legislature, did their best, and I don't envy their position having to try and guess what people would want to do if they actually did their planning. But unfortunately, a lot of people, in fact, I was working on an intestate death tonight before I came over, where we were filling out drafting the pleadings to file with the court for someone that failed to plan and then died.
So say my grandpa dies and failed to plan. Is that where I would come to you guys and say, I know he had money? How does that part work?
Yeah. So if it was your grandpa, then your aunts and uncles are going to be in line from an intestate law standpoint. And they would also generally would have priority. But if your aunts and uncles and your parents and your mother or father, if they're getting along in years, they might want you to step up and do it. And we can prepare documents to have them nominate you as personal representative to handle your grandpa's estate. So you'd be the one in charge of collecting assets, paying debts and expenses, and then distributing the assets.
So there's so much that I don't even know. It's like I don't even know how to ask you questions because I don't know.
It's pretty rowdy, huh?
Yeah, I don't even know how you could possibly know all this stuff. You might be the smartest person that's ever been in here.
I lead a twisted life.
All right, so let's move on to I don't even know how probate works. It's a word that gets thrown around. What does it mean? When does it come up? How does it affect people?
What on earth is it? So
exactly,
probate is, to a lot of people, is scary, and most people that you run into that are that have been around a little longer, so a lot of crystallized wisdom on their head. We talked about that earlier. It's my gray hair is crystallized wisdom. They'll have a probate horror story, and there's the horror stories really only come up with failure to plan. Or with failure to get the right counsel. But probate, if I'm single and I own real estate in Utah and I die and nobody else is on the deed with me, we have to go to probate court to find out who can sign on my behalf, because I own real estate, and we all know if I go to the title company to sell it, real estate agent, and then the title company to close the transaction, they're going to want to know who has authority to sign on behalf of me, and they better not be picking up my hand and signing a deed once I'm expired. And so that's what the trip to probate court really is who has authority to sign on behalf of Tom now that he's gone. And if and I'll use my family as an example since I brought him up, but and we're playing as though my wife passed away. Sorry, Jamie.
You've been cut,
right? and that I didn't do my planning, but I have. My planning's done. But we're pretending like I didn't have any planning. So I die, and my children have equal priority for appointment as personal representatives. So that's the first situation that's not good, is that they could get frustrated with each other, because it's unlikely all four would want to work together. But are they all going to agree on one person to be personal representative or not? And then they would hire. Well, they wouldn't pick who's personal representative. They wouldn't know they had a problem at that point. But I die, and then hopefully they would grieve a little bit, right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
And then they could go and file for probate without a lawyer. It's not the greatest idea because of the complexity.
Yeah.
So generally they would hire a lawyer, and the lawyer writes I call it a letter to the court. It's actually called a application or a petition, depending on what we're filing. And the gist of it is, dear judge, Tom died, and his wife predeceased him. Sorry, Jamie. And he's got 4 kids, and we need to appoint a personal representative. And if I happen to have a will, we need to have the judge declare that it's my last will. It's not enough that I wrote it and signed it. The judge, they teach you in law school, the judge has got to breathe life into your will.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's kind of fun, right? In a twisted way. So the trip to find out who can sign the deed is called probate, and it's like a letter. File the will, or if there's no will, we have intestate succession. We get one of the children appointed as personal representative, or maybe 3 of them, or 2 of them, or maybe all 4 if we have to. And then their duty, the personal representative's duty, is to collect assets and pay expenses. And if I don't have enough money to pay my debts, then there's a statute that spells out the priority for payment of debts. and the personal representative can get in trouble if they don't follow the priority and they run out of money. They could be coming out of their own pocket. So you want to be careful if you're a personal representative that you're using an attorney and asking the right questions, because you can rely on the advice from the attorney as a defense for a bad decision.
So, I mean, what if two of them want to be and they can't agree on it?
That would be a problem, right? Then we'd have a deadlock, and that's where we get some of those bad
Stories.
probate stories from. Yeah, because they could end up in litigation with each other over a decision.
So then it just goes to court, and they
Yeah,
just have to prove who's.
they could fight over it. The judge is going to kick them out pretty quick to have mediation
Okay.
and try to resolve it. But if a lot of times probate court is a lot like family law, where sometimes the emotion gets too involved and people don't make economic decisions; they make emotional decisions, and that makes it really tough, because you just because you're upset doesn't mean sometimes you shouldn't give room and come up with settlement. But mediation is generally a good way to try to get people talking, and sometimes it's the first time that a litigant's heard that their side of the case isn't all that hot, because that would come up in mediation.
Okay. I just think with my siblings, like, we're all pretty hard-headed. So I think we would know. I think, and maybe my siblings, if you listen to this, you can text me, but I think we all know who it would be. but at the same time, I could see us disagreeing on things as well. And so
that may not be the best thing to get started with your siblings as we're coming into Thanksgiving. You're gonna,
yeah.
Might be a rowdy dinner.
Yeah. Luckily, I don't know. I don't think my mom's done any of that stuff. I know her parents have. It was probably last year my grandparents were down and they were kind of going through like smaller assets, kind of putting names on different things. But I don't know if it's gotten past that. I don't think my mom has. I know my dad didn't.
Well, if she's in Utah, then anywhere in Utah, we'll take care of her.
Oh yeah, she is.
Arizona, Nevada, we've got them covered.
What
California too.
How does someone know if they even need to do this? Is this everybody should have one? Like, what if you don't have a lot of assets, money, whatever, to be passed on? I mean, what if you get what I'm saying?
No pun intended there with the be passed on.
Yeah.
So everybody should consider, regardless of assets, consider a power of attorney and a healthcare directive, right? Because if you can't make your own decisions, it'd be nice to be the one to pick them instead of the court.
Okay.
So the healthcare directive would name someone to make medical decisions. The power of attorney would be naming somebody to make financial decisions and pay some bills. Utah has some exceptions to probate. And one of the exceptions, and this one's also indexed for inflation, and so I'm going to give you the statutory number, but it's actually a little bit higher. So if you have up to $100,000 in non-real estate assets, so if you've got 5 bank accounts of $20,000 each, and that's all that's in your name at death, and it's just your name on the accounts, we can deal with that without a probate. And so once in a while, we run into somebody that's renting and that they have $50,000 to their name and their Social Security coming in, and we try not to sell them a trust, because it's if they pay for the trust, it might, not that the trust is really expensive, but it might affect how they're living, right? Because they're living pretty tight if that's what they've got.
Okay.
Because they've got to worry about their future and how long they're going to live. That's the blessing of modern society is we're living longer, and the curse is we're living longer.
Yeah, living longer, and there's less money.
Yeah,
when you're
stress
older.
The money longer. So if we talk clients through that. So I had a lady about 3 or 4 years ago, and she wanted to do her estate planning. She was referred in. She wanted a trust. She didn't own real estate. And I said, you don't need a trust, because we can, avoid probate with your will. And I could tell she was perplexed. She was just stressing. And I said, do all your friends have trusts? And she said, yeah, they do. And I said, are you not going to sleep well if you don't have a trust? And she said, no, I'm not. And I said, well, I'm telling you again, you don't need it, but I am happy to write a revocable trust for you if that'll help you have peace of mind, because that's what we're about at Proven Laws. We want our clients to have peace of mind when we're done. So we wrote her a trust, even though she didn't need it, but she's happy, and she made the decision herself. We educated her, and she decided, which, if you recall, that's how you made the decision between whether you should just do a will and or whether you should do a will and a trust. Is we talked through, educated you, and then you decided.
Yeah.
So
I remember that. Man, it's funny because when people come into my safe store, when they start asking specific things about safes, I'm like, hey, man, this is going to be a fire hose of information. So, like, stop me when something doesn't make sense. And that's how it was coming into there, because I'm usually pretty prepped on a lot of things that I do and I talk about. But when I went in there, I was just like, and I talk a lot. So for me, just to sit down and shut up, that I don't know what we're doing. I'm just trying to absorb as much as I can.
drinking out of that fire hose.
Exactly.
So yeah, and you saw that word persterpes in there, so you didn't know if that was a disease or
I thought for sure.
turned out to be a bloodline distribution.
Yeah. I thought, can this be passed? Can this be contracted over touch, or how does this work?
Well, they have a salve for it, I understand.
Yeah. All right. Let's go through a little crypto stuff. We're not going to get into, like you had said, we weren't going to get into like types of crypto and what to do, that side of it, but what can you guys do? You were saying it's mostly people that have made some money on crypto and they want to access it. Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah, there may not be a ton of those right now.
Yeah, not right now. This was hot about, 10 months ago?
Yeah, we had some fun planning about 10 months ago. So the IRS generally treats crypto as property. So it's like investing in XYZ Corp. And if you sell stock in XYZ Corp, you're going to, if you held it long term, so more than 12 months, then you get capital gain treatment. So a lower tax rate than if it was, you sold it in 6 months, you have ordinary income treatment. So with crypto, it's like having shares of stock. So if I had crypto and I came into the safe store and the safe store accepted cryptocurrency, if I use cryptocurrency to purchase, it's like I'm selling an investment, and so I've got gain to recognize on my side if my investment in crypto has gone up since I purchased, and on your side as a business owner, you're going to have income because you're operational, and so you have your costs. You get to subtract those from the sale price of the safe. But you're still going to have income on your side, and I'm going to be paying a gain, because it's just like I went and sold stock in, Microsoft, and then decided to come buy a safe. When I sell that stock, I've got to pay a gain.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's just how it rolls. But it's nice to know that it's treated like property so that it can be predictable. And with the planning side, that was kind of fun. And we're at a loss. Let's talk about the loss side of it. If you're invested more money into your crypto than your crypto is worth, and you have an investment somewhere else in your portfolio that made money, then you should get with your tax practitioner and see if maybe you shouldn't sell some crypto at a loss in order to offset it against some income. If it's investment money outside of a retirement account, then you can do some strategy like that, and your broker could help you with it, your CPA or your attorney, usually a tax attorney, could help you with that.
So right now, coming up at the end of the year, that could be a strategy you might want to.
Right? Because even in the stock market, it's down, and I'm planning to take a look at my portfolio and on the taxable side and sell some stuff that's at a loss to try and offset it against some income. So that's just a good thing. But let's go back when times were more fun.
Yeah.
2 years ago, and the crypto was high, and clients or people with crypto would come in, clients would come in, and they, how do we deal with this? We want to convert some to cash so we can enjoy some of it, but our gain is horrendous, right? Because you invest, I don't know. Do you have a good example? Yeah,
people were buying Ethereum at $30, and then it was up at $4,000.
Okay. So that's a lot of gain if they held it over 12 months.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the ones that people we were talking with, some of them came in and they said, I've got $5 million worth of crypto. Well, when we talk to them, we find out that they invested almost nothing and have $5 million worth of crypto. So if they're going to sell so they can go buy a car or a house, that's a lot of gain to recognize, and it's painful. And one of the strategies to consider in that situation is to use a charitable remainder trust. You contribute some crypto. This is getting a little bit complex, so I apologize for my language in advance.
Grab a piece of paper and follow this.
Right. So you can create a thing called a charitable remainder trust. It's a CRT is the abbreviation. It'll show up on Google. Don't do it yourself. There's a lot of pitfalls there. But if you do a transfer of your crypto into the CRT and the transfer itself, you need to be careful because you can't sell it and put in cash into the CRT, or that's a realizing event and you've already nailed the tax consequences to yourself. But a wallet-to-wallet transfer from you into a wallet that's in the trustee's name of the CRT, of Charitable Remainder Trust, that's how you get the crypto into that trust, and then the trust can sell it. Now, with a Charitable Remainder Trust, generally you keep, you say, well, I want to take a stream of cash flow back in exchange for this contribution to the trust. You might get a current income tax deduction. I told you it was terrible. I apologize. But you can get a stream of cash flow back. So me in my early 50s, maybe I'd qualify to get it's actuarially calculated. Maybe I qualify to get 8% back on my money every year. So the assets under management in the trust, I get 8% per year is a way I could set it up.
Because you've sent wallet to wallet, and then did that wallet cash it out?
The wallet inside of the CRT cashes it out.
Okay, so it's dollars now.
Yeah, it can be dollars now. Okay. And so we revalue the trust, the assets in the trust every year, and that determines the payout. And I actually might qualify for a payout as high as 10% at 53 years old. We just have to run the numbers. And so every year I get 10% of the money invested in the CRT, and the CRT can go take the cash down. It could reinvest in crypto, but I would have to have done away with a prudent investor standard. I'm going too far there. There's restrictions. You need to invest as a prudent investor would when you're a trustee of a trust.
Okay.
And the drafting attorney on that CRT can adjust that.
If you're getting to that point, go and see Tom.
Right. There you go. So let's say that I put my money in a CRT and I just want to invest it in the stock market generally, and I've got crypto still on the side, but not in the CRT. So I just do some good investing and I keep making more money, maybe. Not this year, but other years.
You're buying now. You're not selling.
Right. Yeah, it's on sale. It's like Dillard's has got a sale going. It's time to well, Dillard's isn't the place you guys go. It's what's the clothing place?
I don't shop.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you. I did go into Costco once this year.
Go to the gun store to shop. That's about it.
Right. So the money's in the CRT and growing. Every year we revalue the assets. I can take 10% of the value of the assets, either on the beginning of the year or the end of the year. We get to pick when we draft the trust. And it's a way I didn't realize any income when the trust sold it because it's a charitable trust. And when the trust liquidates, it liquidates to charitable beneficiaries. And normally, to use a charitable remainder trust, you'd have to have what we call charitable intent. You have charity you want to have benefit from your assets. But with the differential between a person's tax basis, so they paid so little for that crypto, and it's worth so much that it's such a detriment to try to sell that the charitable remainder trust actually becomes attractive, even if you didn't really want to benefit a charity. And we can write that charitable remainder trust so it's for the lives of a husband and wife, or two spouses, whatever. And we can write that so it's for a term of years. So if there's somebody that's 90 and they want to invest their, do a charitable remainder trust, we could set that up for 20 years. And if they die, then the remainder goes and we can name contingent beneficiaries on it. So it's kind of a fun asset. And historically, we used it a lot with real estate that had a really low basis. I was going to
say, yeah.
Or a stock portfolio that's not in their retirement account that has a really low basis. So you bought Microsoft when Bill was still in his garage.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. And, but historically, generally, people needed a charitable intent because the charity is going to get some money under the IRS rules. But with crypto, I think the bet's off a little bit. I think that's worth looking at.
The bet's off because they're still trying to kind of figure the whole thing out, right? So is this changing all the time?
It is. It's a complicated area. For example, how do I title your crypto in your trust name for a revocable trust? And there's quite a bit of commentary back and forth. Well, and it depends. Is it in, is it an account like, I'd have to cheat and look, Bitcoin?
Is it like crypto.com or is it?
Yeah. Or is it just purely the password onto the blockchain? Am I saying that?
Is it centralized or decentralized? Is that what you mean?
I'm going to have to rely on you there.
Yeah.
So, Because if it's out there on the chain where you have to have the password and you lose the password, you don't get to it.
Yeah.
That's pretty hard to transfer to your trust, but we can come up with ways to do it. But who do you trust with the password? Which, by the way, on an estate planning, there's a little side note on estate planning. Passwords are a big deal, and you need to come up with a way to protect them, but also figure out how to get them to your loved ones when you die, your personal representative or your trustee.
Yeah.
But anyway, just transferring the crypto to a revocable trust, there's a lot of commentary back and forth about what really works, and it depends on what condition or how the crypto's held. On what the answer might be. So it's complicated, but the IRS, I was just on their website before I came over, and they've got some good frequently asked questions on crypto and what it means. I understand there were some questions on tax forms this year about it.
I'm sure.
Even so, good to take a look at that.
So when you do the charitable trust, if I'm putting the crypto into that, does that count as a loss for me because I'm donating that?
No, it's a charitable deduction.
Okay.
So you do get a deduction based on an actuarial calculation. It's what's the calculated remainder interest. So if are you 30?
33.
So you're 33, and we plug that into the calculator and say if he's 33 and takes a 5% out per year for the rest of his life, what is the anticipated amount left over for Save the Whales or whatever your favorite charity is, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you calculate the value of the deduction that you get to take currently. So you contribute the crypto, you get a current income tax deduction. You don't recognize the gain. It gets recognized inside the trust.
Right.
You start the stream of cash flows. And so it's just, it can work out. It's kind of interesting. There's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah, there is. I'm because I've heard this before. I've watched crypto, YouTube videos on this kind of subject, right? And so everything you said, I'd heard it before and just watched the little flow of how it went, but it was very basic, right? Like we just did. That's very basic, and you can get extremely deep into all of that, I feel like. But what I didn't understand, so let me ask you this. So you have the charitable trust, that's what it's called, right? And then you're the beneficiary of that. So that's what I don't understand. So that trust is just paying you?
You're a lifetime beneficiary. So we contribute $1 million worth of crypto, and the trust sells it and invests the $1 million in mutual funds.
Okay.
And the payout, I used 5% with you as an example because you're 33. I don't know if you'd really qualify at 33. We'd have to run the numbers. But let's say you qualified, that it was a qualifying distribution for you to receive 5% of the value of the assets in the CRT per year. So 5% of $1 million, 10% was 100, so that's 50,000 a year you can have, right?
So I guess what I'm getting tripped up on is it's charitable. So why does that go to me?
Well, because you wanted to contribute money, but you wanted to retain an interest.
Okay.
Because you couldn't afford to just give it away. And the Charity Remainder Trust was created. There's also a thing called a Charitable Lead Trust. They're created to support the notion of charitable giving, but because of the tax benefits and the ability for you to retain an interest during life, a stream of cash flows, it encourages supporting charities, but it also helps you not have to recognize a whole bunch of income in 1 year. You can spread it out over a period of years. So in the example where you're going to get $50,000 out of the $1 million Charitable Remainder Trust, it's going to come out with capital. It's going to have tax attributes. It'll be part capital gain. It might be some ordinary income in there, depending on the earnings, things like that, and it carries those tax attributes to you. But it's only $50,000 this year instead of $1 million if you sold it all this year. And you're a lifetime beneficiary. And under my example, it's a life estate as opposed to a term of years. And the remainder beneficiary, so the contingent beneficiary on your death, was a charity in my example, or a group of charities.
Okay.
And you can retain, it's an irrevocable trust, but you can retain the ability to switch charities as well. So if you lose your appreciation for Save the Whales, you could switch.
Okay. Save the Whales.
I use that one because we're, landlocked in here.
Sure.
No whales around.
Man, that's a lot.
Right?
That's a lot to get into.
It's not a tuma.
No, it's I'm not at that level, but it interests me of like, okay, even if that's your plan, you need to go get all this stuff set up. And maybe, and like you said, there's people that'll come to you and say, hey, this is where I'm at. What's going to benefit me? And maybe the answer is nothing, but most of the time, I'm sure there's something you can do to protect yourself. So, I don't know. Since I've done it, I've talked to probably a dozen people and I'm like, hey, you got to go and do this. Like, you don't understand how important this is. And especially friends that are divorced, right? Like, that was my big example when we went in. I was like, so wait, so the ex-spouse just controls everything now? No, yeah, pretty much.
They could, yeah.
That's crazy. Go ahead.
I was just going to back up just a hair because you brought something up. Yeah, by all means, you're not going to find all these tax strategy ideas on. You'll find them on YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff because they're on there, but you won't necessarily know what you're hearing. But that's part of where a well-educated, experienced attorney can stop and help you, right? You could come in and you say, Tom, I need a trust and a will. And I could have looked at you and Amanda narrowly and just written a trust and a will. But you remember we talked about asset protection. Obviously, we talked about crypto or you wouldn't have brought it up.
Yeah.
And other things. I'm not saying that he's the one that I did the CRT for because he's not.
I'm not. I don't have that much.
But we look at when a client comes in, we ask you to bring in an asset schedule, right? And we look at the assets on the schedule. And then I look more of it seems weird to talk holistic approach, right? When you're talking law, but I look at how can we keep more money in that family unit and give the IRS less in a proper way. And that's really what I think my job is when you and Amanda came in and with you did bring Will in.
We had Will the first time, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you came in, what can I do to improve your overall family situation and reduce what you might pay in taxes properly? And so that's how we analyzed it. And we also looked at asset protection. We got an LLC for a rental property if you have one, right? And we encourage people to look at those things. And we encourage insurance is our favorite thing to lead with in asset protection is to make sure we have a proper liability insurance coverage.
Yeah, because that was one of my fears with, I don't even know how many LLCs we have, 5 or 6 between Amanda and I, maybe 7. I don't know, because we have one for a property now too. So anyway, so that was my thing is like, what happens to all of this? And so to get that protected as well, and in my stage in life right now, it's everything benefits my son. I mean, that's a lot of the driver of what I'm doing nowadays.
Amanda.
Well,
everything benefits Amanda, and then,
sure.
And then Will.
I just mean like at the end of the day, I want to make sure that they're taken care of, right? I think Amanda would have more money if I wasn't around spending it all. So
well, that's that life insurance policy I suggested, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't sell life insurance, but I did tell you a story I remember about my own experience with my wife leaving town, and they left me with the 4 little kids. And it was an eye-opener. When she got back, I bought more life insurance on her. There was no way I was going to make a run of it without being able to hire some help.
Sure. Yeah. What else? You got anything else? I think we kind of ran through all my stuff.
We hit all, huh? From an asset protection standpoint, if we've got some more time,
we got plenty of time,
just a little bit. So you've got there's different levels of asset protection, but like I said, the lead on asset protection is always just make sure you got proper insurance. So you've got automobile insurance, and people with homes have got homeowners, and usually they're at the same company. And a lot of times we're analyzing that wrong. We're like, well, we what's the cheapest I can get? And that's not necessarily the right answer, right? Because I think the Utah minimum auto policy is like $25,000 in liability coverage. That's not even going to pay for most of the cars on the road.
Yeah.
And so we want to be a little more thoughtful about that. And you can buy a policy called an umbrella policy of liability insurance that will insure above what your auto limit and your homeowner's limit is and provides some better protection. It helps you sleep better at night. Knowing that you've got the coverage in place. And so, for example, a common denomination of umbrella liability policy insurance is $1 million or a $2 million policy you could get. And they'll have you push your car limit to 300. And so let's say you had an auto accident with your umbrella policy. For me, if I have an auto accident, I hurt people, I would hope to be able to pay for the damage I did, which I know is an odd way to, not everybody describes it that way. But likewise, the flip side is maybe I wasn't at fault. I know I wasn't at fault, but somebody's coming after me anyway. And that's what we'll talk about next on the other side of it. But having that insurance in place, the $300,000 on my auto would come up and pay, and if the claims exceeded the 300, then my umbrella policy would kick in. And the other thing that we're not always thinking about is that the insurance company, if the claims don't total $1.3 million, the insurance company is going to have insurance defense counsel hired. They're not necessarily your attorney, but they're kind of like your attorney, and so they're looking out to try and pay only what's required. I was trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
And but you have that coverage, and so that's the first line of defense, is to just have some good insurance in place to protect what a husband and wife have put together. When we get worried about somebody coming at us wrongfully, that they don't really have a claim, there's other tools. If I have a real property portfolio where I've got some houses that I rent out and maybe a commercial property, we might use limited liability companies to compartmentalize the liabilities. So if I had let's say I owned a building that housed a jump house, and somebody got injured very badly in the trampolines and stuff, and sued not only the proprietor that's leasing the property, but sued the landowner saying, you were negligent in something. If I have an LLC for that commercial property, and then I have an LLC with my residential property, the lawsuit against the commercial property, hopefully my insurance will cover it. And if it doesn't, then maybe they're going to own a commercial building, but they're not going to own my residential properties because they're in different LLCs. And if I treat that LLC that owns the commercial property as a separate, distinct entity, so I don't pay my groceries out of it, then I can expect that it should hold up and hold that piece of liability with it and not taint my other assets. And so that's kind of some fundamental asset protection. Mm-hmm. But Utah also has another trust called a Domestic Asset Protection Trust. It's about 14 or 15 states. If you look that up, I totally could be wrong.
I'm not familiar with this one. So
okay, Domestic Asset Protection Trust is fairly recent. It may have started in Alaska. Alaska and Nevada have been in the game a long time. Utah's been in for quite a while now too. And it's a way where I can create an irrevocable trust, convey assets to the irrevocable trust, and be a lifetime beneficiary, but not have it be available for my creditors. Now, if I've got creditors already, it doesn't work. You can't hide from your creditors by hurrying up and doing it when it's too late. But if I have no creditors right now, I could fund an asset protection trust, and so I could put maybe my house in there, or I could put an LLC in there that owns the real property of some kind, and play by the rules with the asset protection trust. And if somebody brings a claim, it's going to reduce what you'd have to pay out on the claim if they're trying to attach that asset if it exceeds the insurance limits. I didn't say there was a guarantee on asset protection on the asset protection trust, but it's a very powerful tool, and it does have its issues. So when you come in to talk about it, we'll go through those. But it's a good idea. It's good to think about it. If you're got some high liability risk, if you're a physician, a lawyer, if you blow up buildings for a living, or if you there's a contractor here in town, I think, that uses dynamite to blow up rock on a lot, and that person's got quite a bit of liability, and that might be a good person for an asset protection trust. So
I've also heard this scenario where so say I've got a property in a trust, and I'm going to stumble through this, so bear with me. I'm pretty sure if you have all of that in a trust, I don't own it now. The trust does, correct?
On an asset protection trust?
I'm not sure. I've just heard this scenario before, so I'm not sure how it works. But the point would be, so I don't own it. The trust owns it. So if I go do any work on it or maintain it or anything, then the trust pays me, because it's the trust. Does this make sense?
So I'll draw a distinction for you that helps. So the revocable trust that we've been talking about, like what you and Amanda did, the revocable trust is see-through for liability purposes, and it's see-through for tax purposes. So if you're, if you run over a heart surgeon at a crosswalk, sorry to the heart surgeon, he's in a crosswalk or she's in a crosswalk, so that's big liability. You run them over, they're going to be able to get to assets that are in the revocable trust if the claim exceeds your insurance limits.
Okay.
But if you had assets in it, if you had no creditors and you funded assets into an asset protection trust, and then you negligently ran over the heart surgeon in the crosswalk, they're going to have a hard time getting assets from the asset protection trust.
Okay.
So it's a way to kind of put some assets away for a rainy day.
Yeah, because it's a social media thing right now of like, well, the rich people, they don't own anything. Their trusts or whatever own things. They don't own any of it. And so I've always thought, well, what is that? Like they talk about it, but what is it?
Yeah. So it's different irrevocable trusts.
Okay.
Right. They can provide some asset protection. There's an irrevocable life insurance trust. Depending on the provisions, you can protect assets there. The domestic asset protection trust, the child remainder trust we talked about is irrevocable. So the principal asset sitting there is protected from your creditors because it's no longer your asset. It's the remainder beneficiaries, that charity.
Okay.
So there's different things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And all that stuff, they can come sit down with you.
I'm just full of information.
You definitely are. That's what was fun. It was fun for me to come in and just sit down and just listen. And I don't know if we can mention this or not, so we can cut it or not, but like having your daughter there, having Annie there, having these guys there to sit down, and they're very knowledgeable too. It was fun to kind of sit down and
catch up. Yeah, and we're good there. So Lindsay, my daughter, works in the law firm. She's working remotely right now because she's working on a LLM in tax. So she's an attorney with an advanced tax degree. So we're looking forward to getting her back, and she'll be a real asset at the firm.
How long's she gone?
It's a 10-month program.
10-month. Okay.
She's going to NYU, the #1 program in the U.S.
Yeah, because I think first time I came in was a day or two before she was leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's still working a little bit remotely, but she's got to run for her money there with NYU's program. So she's studying hard. She's knuckled down right now.
Good for her.
So Lindsay came in for part of the meeting because she knows you, and then Annie's a paralegal in our office, and we have some 3 really good paralegals in our office, and Annie is knowledgeable, and so she handled part of your signing meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So she went through powers of attorney and healthcare directives, and visited with you about some answers there, pros and cons, and then I came in towards the end and went through the trust and the will and asked if you had questions. And
you were the closer, and she was, here's all the information. You ready to sign?
We wanted to make sure you had access to us in case you had more questions, or in case anything that Annie had to say brought forth any more questions. So
yeah, super easy. We went in, we were in and out. It was pretty quick. It's one of those things where if you have a lot of questions, it'll take more time. But definitely ask questions when you're doing these things. And I don't know, it was a lot easier than I thought. I was stressed out about it. And it's one of those things, like you're saying, it gets procrastinated. But once you go do it, it's easy. And it wasn't, when you told me what it cost, I was like, done. Like it was not as much as I thought it was going to be either. So, and that'll be at different levels for different people, but
just for the record on the show here, I didn't pay him any extra money to say that.
Yeah,
that was totally voluntary. I'm just teasing you.
That's a review straight from me.
I appreciate that. No, and you know what? We focus a lot on trying to make it easy. We're client-centered firm. We want you to have a good experience. So, we communicate right up front. We try to get potential clients to fill out an estate planning questionnaire before they come in, so that they've already kind of started talking about things. But, if you can't fill it all out, it's not a big deal because we're going to go through it anyway. And then, one of my favorite parts of the practice is sitting down in that initial meeting and learning about our clients and what their goals are, what their holdings are, and what we can do to give them peace of mind. And so it's been a rewarding career that way. And it's what I've done since 1998 when I first started as an attorney.
Wow.
Is estate planning and business. I did estate planning and business from the get-go, and I still do some business work, but we're really focused and niched up on the estate planning and probate and trust administration. So
that's great. We're hitting an hour right now. So if you got anything else, we can jump in.
I've always got more, so you'll have to come by the office to get more. But I do love to visit in those initial meetings, and we always take good care of our clients, or always aim to.
You do a little bit of social media, or do you just kind of have a page available?
On the social media,
Proven Law.
We've got some Facebook. We've got we've got a website with provenlaw.com. We're on the orange one, Instagram, and my kids are going to shoot me for not knowing that. Right?
Well, I had saw a post, I think, about Halloween. I can't remember now. But
Yeah,
a day
we
or
had
two ago, there was a
a
post.
horse with a skeleton
That's
painted on
right.
it in front of the courthouse.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you can imagine what they thought when they saw the cameras the next morning after we shot that photo shoot. And we also have a YouTube. We've got a few YouTube videos that are kind of interesting. My father's of counsel with a law firm, and he actually taught Ted Bundy at the University of Utah.
Really?
And so there's a couple of YouTube videos about Ted Bundy and Dad's brush with that. Not brush with death, because Dad needed to be female and with dark hair, I think, to be Ted Bundy's type.
Yeah, he wasn't in the type.
Yeah.
So where are you guys located? What's your information? How can someone get a hold of you?
Oh, that's a great question. We're on St. George Boulevard, 216 West St. George Boulevard, right on the corner. We have wheelchair access if that's needed. We've got an elevator. We've got great people to interact with you. Mentioned our website. Our phone number is 435-688-9231. And you can even get set an appointment right through our website if you don't want to call.
Is it just provenlaw.com?
Provenlaw.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I'm pretty sure. I think when I asked your son, hey, I need to get in touch with your dad, I think he just sent me that. And he said, just go on there. There's a scheduler. Just pick Tom, pick a date, and it's that easy.
Yeah. And so you do that, and then one of our paralegals will call you up, confirm the date, and send you a questionnaire and answer any initial questions. We make it easy.
Great. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I think we're good.
We're good?
Enjoyed visiting. My first run at a podcast, and before this, it was just a radio show or two in the last 20 years.
Well, I think, and maybe what we can do if you guys are open to it, and when Lindsay gets back, is have some type of schedule with you, and we can have like a one thing that we dive into. Would you be willing to do something like that?
That'd be fun. And Lindsay would be better at it because she'd be much more animated than
No, you've done great. It was kind of fun just to brush all of the topics, right? And we kind of just had a small dive into each one. And then that's kind of what I was trying to do. Kind of just open up minds, have questions. And every person's going to have a different thing, right? Like for me, it was protect Amanda and William, and also what happens with businesses, what happens with assets, what happens with this stuff, and just to spell it all out. With someone that's not in my shoes, they're going to have different questions. So that was the whole purpose of this. So hopefully we got that across to everyone. If you have any questions above what we've covered, which you should, because there's so much more that we could have covered, you can call them. You can get on their website. You can get on Facebook, write a message on Facebook, probably comment on anything, really. There's multiple ways to get a hold of you.
Yeah. For sure, it's a good thing. And it's fun to help somebody that's struggling with a question. They struggle with it for years, and they finally come see us, and we're just like, well, consider this.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
So
and that's what it was for me for about 10 months probably before I finally just did it, because I didn't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So
we're way less scary in person.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's Tom Bayles from Proven Law. If you have any questions, you've got provenlaw.com. You've got their Facebook. You can call them and reach out to Tom, reach out to the team. Great people over there. We've personally used them. Like I said, Amanda and I have been in there. And if you have any questions and Tom's too scary for you, you can message me and I'll help out in any way I can. So yeah, if you've enjoyed the episode, please share it, like it, comment. Would love comments. If we have any comments or any questions come through on our platforms, we can direct them to Tom and Lindsay and try and get those answered and back to you. But I think it'll be fun to have some type of schedule of bringing them in and kind of deep diving into some more of those products that you offer. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, the answers to the deepest mysteries in
There you
society.
go. There you go. All right, guys, episode 71. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you guys next week.